Imagine this. You are the pilot of the most expensive, most secretive bomber ever built by human hands. You are cruising at altitude over the Black Sea in international airspace, doing exactly what you were designed to do. Watching, listening, invisible. You have been invisible your entire career. Every radar that has ever tried to find you has failed. Every air defense system that has ever tried to lock onto you has come up empty. You are a ghost. You are $2 billion of American engineering, specifically constructed around one core promise. No one can see you. And then, without warning, without any electronic alarm, without any sensor alert, 3 aircraft appear on your own systems, not approaching from a safe distance, not performing a warning pass, not doing the polite, formal theater of a military intercept. They are behind you, close, and they are staying there. That is where this story begins. And by the time it ends, you will understand why what happened over the Black Sea in the early hours of that night may be the most consequential military intelligence event of the past decade. 31 minutes. That is the number that changes everything, not the fact that Russian aircraft found a B-2 Spirit stealth bomber, not the fact that they got close, the fact that they stayed close. 3 Su-57s, Russia's most advanced 5th-generation combat aircraft, maintained a weapons release range tracking formation on a B-2 Spirit for 31 continuous minutes. The B-2 changed course twice. The Su-57s matched both changes. The B-2 descended through 2 altitude bands. The Su-57s followed. Through every maneuver, through every attempt to alter the geometry, the 3 aircraft held their position with a precision that tells you everything you need to know about the quality of the track they were maintaining. This was not a near miss. This was not a provocation designed to make headlines. This was a data collection operation, methodically executed, and by the time those 3 aircraft broke off at the edge of NATO airspace, they had collected something that no Russian system had ever collected before. And here is the detail that should make every Western defense planner lose sleep tonight. 47 hours after that intercept, not a single NATO member government had issued a public statement. No Pentagon briefing, no Supreme Allied Commander Europe press conference, no White House comment, zero. The silence itself is the story. And understanding why NATO went silent is understanding just how serious what happened over the Black Sea actually was. Let us start with what the Su-57 is, because almost everything you have heard about this aircraft is misleading. In Western defense media, the Su-57 has a reputation problem. It is routinely described as a troubled program, underfunded, delayed, produced in embarrassingly small numbers compared to the F-22 and the F-35, with a radar cross-section that does not come close to American 5th-generation standards. All of that contains elements of truth. The Su-57 is not as stealthy as an F-22. It has been produced in smaller numbers than originally planned. Its development stretched years beyond schedule. But here is what the reputation narrative gets fundamentally wrong. It judges the Su-57 by what it is not, rather than by what it was actually built to be. The Su-57 was not built to do what an F-22 does. The F-22 was built as an air superiority fighter, optimized for beyond visual range combat against other manned aircraft. Its stealth, its supercruise, its sensor fusion, all of it oriented around defeating other fighters in contested airspace. The Su-57 was built around a different primary objective, one that Russian Air Force doctrine has been explicit about in its own publications. The Su-57 was designed as a sensor platform, an intelligence collection aircraft that also happens to be a highly capable combat fighter. And that distinction is the key to everything that happened over the Black Sea. Because when you build an aircraft around sensor collection rather than air superiority, you make different engineering choices. You invest your design budget differently. And the investment Russia made in the Su-57's sensor architecture is the thing that no publicly available Western assessment has adequately reckoned with. The Su-57 carries the N036 Byelka radar system. It is an active electronically scanned array, what the military calls an AESA radar, but it is not configured the way most AESA radars are configured. Most fighter aircraft carry a single forward-facing antenna. The Su-57 carries 5 separate AESA antenna apertures distributed across the airframe. 1 primary forward aperture, 2 side-looking apertures, and 2 additional apertures integrated into the leading edges of the wings, providing rearward and lateral coverage. 5 separate arrays, simultaneously active, giving the Su-57 a 360-degree radar picture around the aircraft at all times. Now think about why that architecture specifically defeats B-2 stealth in a way that no previous Russian radar system could. A stealth aircraft's radar cross-section, the measurement of how large it appears to radar, is not uniform in all directions. The frontal aspect, the nose-on view, is where stealth is most effective. The B-2's frontal radar cross-section is often compared to a large bird, vanishingly small for an aircraft of its size and weight. But the side aspects, the aft aspect, the views from above and below, those are substantially larger. An aircraft with only a forward-looking radar will only ever see the B-2 from the front, which is exactly where stealth is most effective. An aircraft with side-looking and rear-looking apertures can see the B-2 from the angles where its stealth is least effective. And 3 aircraft, each with that multi-aperture capability, approaching from different bearings and surrounding a target, create a cooperative illumination geometry that exposes every aspect of the aircraft simultaneously. That is exactly what happened in the first 7 minutes of the Intercept. The 3 Su-57s did not approach the B-2 in standard intercept formation. One came from slightly ahead and to the left. One came from the right. One came from below and behind. That geometry was deliberate. It was not aggressive maneuvering. It was a carefully calculated approach that placed a radar aperture against every major aspect of the B-2's airframe simultaneously. And crucially, the radar data from all 3 aircraft was being shared in real time through the Su-57's data link, fused by each aircraft's onboard processor into a single cooperative track. 3 aircraft, 5 apertures each, 15 simultaneous radar perspectives on a single target, all combined into one picture. That is not brute force. That is engineering designed specifically to solve the problem of low observable aircraft, and the detection range it achieved confirms the design works. Previous intercepts of B-2 aircraft by Russian and Chinese systems have produced radar contact at ranges of 20 to 35 kilometers, close enough for visual identification but not sufficient for a sustained weapons quality track. The Su-57s made initial radar contact with the B-2 at approximately 65 kilometers, more than double the previously demonstrated detection performance against this target. And then they closed to 18 kilometers, well within the engagement range of the R-37M hypersonic air-to-air missile that the Su-57 carries as its primary beyond visual range weapon, and they stayed there. Minutes 7 through 19 are what intelligence professionals will be analyzing for years, because the Su-57s in this phase are not maneuvering aggressively. They are not performing harassment runs. They are holding precise formation separation, consistent distances, consistent relative bearings, in a pattern specifically designed to maximize cooperative radar geometry while keeping the B-2 in simultaneous multi-aspect illumination. They are conducting what Signals Intelligence Doctrine calls a controlled measurement, and what they are measuring is the B-2's radar cross-section at every aspect angle available from their formation geometry. The Su-57's radar system, operating in its high-resolution inverse synthetic aperture radar mode, can build a detailed electromagnetic image of a target. It maps the radar reflectivity of individual structural features, identifies which surfaces and edges produce which radar returns, and constructs what is called a radar cross-section profile of the target across multiple frequency bands and aspect angles. 12 minutes of sustained cooperative illumination of a B-2 from 3 aspect angles simultaneously, using the most capable airborne AESA radar system Russia has ever operated, produced a radar cross-section characterization of the B-2 that is more detailed and more complete than anything Russia has ever obtained before. Russia did not need to shoot down a B-2 to learn what it needed to know. 31 minutes of measurement was more valuable than a kill. A kill ends the data collection after a single engagement and starts a war. 31 minutes of cooperative multi-aspect radar illumination produces a complete electromagnetic map of the B-2's stealth characteristics from the angles that matter most for targeting. And then the B-2 altered course, approximately 35 degrees to the right, shifting the relative aspect angles of all 3 Su-57s simultaneously, presenting new geometry, new cross-section angles. The Su-57s matched the turn precisely, maintaining their formation separation and relative bearings through the maneuver. That detail is more significant than it sounds. You cannot match a target's turn precisely while maintaining a multi-aircraft formation geometry if you are working from a marginal or degraded track. Formation maintenance through a course alteration of that precision confirms a weapons quality track, one precise enough to guide a missile, sustained continuously, not approximate, not intermittent, weapons quality. The kind of track that, had the order been given, would have provided a valid fire control solution. The B-2 descended through 2 altitude bands, the Su-57s followed. The B-2 exited into Romanian airspace, which is NATO territory, and the Su-57s broke off at the boundary, not because the track was lost, not because any countermeasure or electronic warfare disrupted the cooperative picture. They broke off because the political boundary of NATO airspace is a line Russia chose not to cross that night. The track was still valid when the Su-57s turned back. They left because they were finished, not because they were stopped. What Russia collected in those 31 minutes falls into 4 specific categories, and understanding each one explains why this intercept is strategically significant far beyond the bilateral relationship between Russia and the United States. The first is aspect-dependent radar cross-section mapping. Russia now has an empirically measured profile of the B-2's radar signature across the aspect angles available from last night's geometry, not theoretical estimates, not inferences from design analysis, measured data from operational conditions from an aircraft performing its actual mission, characterized by the radar system Russia would use in any real engagement. That profile answers the targeting question that every Russian air defense commander needs answered. From which directions, at which ranges, using which frequencies, can a Russian system reliably track a B-2? Before that intercept, Russia had models. After it, Russia has measurements. The second category is a mission characterization. The B-2's own radar, navigation, and communication systems were active during the intercept, as they would be on any real mission. The Su-57s electronic intelligence collection systems spent 31 minutes recording every signal the B-2 emitted. Frequency, pulse characteristics, modulation patterns. The electronic signature of the B-2, measured at close range and operational conditions, is now in Russian possession. That signature library is precisely what passive detection systems need to find a stealth aircraft without using active radar at all. The third category is flight performance data. Speed, turn radius, altitude ceiling, rate of altitude change, all measured in a stress condition rather than estimated from published specifications. That data informs the fire control calculations that air defense planners use when designing intercept geometries. The fourth category is the one no official statement will address directly. Russia has now demonstrated to its own pilots, its own air defense planners, and every defense establishment watching this conflict that the Su-57's cooperative radar architecture can maintain a weapons quality track on a B-2 Spirit for 31 continuous minutes in operational conditions. That is not just data, that is doctrine validation. It tells every Russian air defense commander, every Su-57 pilot, and every allied military analyst with access to Russian intelligence sharing that the problem the B-2 was designed to make unsolvable has a solution, and now consider where that solution goes next. Russia and Iran have maintained a defense cooperation relationship that has deepened dramatically throughout this conflict. Iranian drone technology has been transferred to Russia. Russian air defense technology has been transferred to Iran. The two governments describe their relationship publicly as a strategic partnership without limits, which in the language of defense cooperation means intelligence sharing on adversary capabilities is not exceptional but routine. The B-2 electromagnetic profile collected over the Black Sea is precisely the category of intelligence that flows through that partnership. Iran's air defense planners will have access to it. China's relationship with Russian defense intelligence is more carefully managed but equally consequential. China is developing the J-20 stealth fighter and the H-20 stealth bomber, its own analog to the B-2, using design principles that have incorporated every available data point about American stealth technology. The B-2's radar cross-section profile at non-frontal aspects, measured empirically by a cooperative system in operational conditions, is exactly what China's air defense suppression planners need to develop accurate engagement envelopes for a future conflict. A single intercept conducted without a shot fired, without a treaty violation, without a single official acknowledgement from any government has just materially improved the anti-B-2 planning capability of every state that Russia shares intelligence with. That is the strategic multiplier effect that makes the Black Sea intercept something far larger than a bilateral incident. Now return to the silence. 47 hours, no statement from NATO. And when you examine the available explanations for that silence, the one that survives scrutiny is the most uncomfortable one. NATO's silence is not ignorance. The Black Sea is among the most densely monitored airspace in the world. NATO maintains continuous surveillance via AWACS aircraft operating from Romanian airspace, signals intelligence aircraft on near-continuous rotations, and ground-based radar coverage across every Black Sea member state. NATO knows exactly what happened. The silence is not confusion or bureaucratic delay either. The alliance has issued statements on intercepts before, quickly, when it serves strategic purposes to do so. The silence is the sound of an alliance processing information it did not expect to receive and has not yet determined how to characterize publicly. Because what happened over the Black Sea tests an assumption that sits at the foundation of B-2 operational planning. The assumption that the B-2 can penetrate any adversary air defense environment with acceptable risk because it cannot be reliably tracked by any system an adversary is known to possess. That assumption was tested last night against the most capable airborne sensor platform Russia operates, and the assumption did not hold for 31 minutes. That does not mean the B-2 program is over. It does not mean the platform is defeated. It means the threat assessment that underpins every B-2 mission planning process, every route selection, every air defense suppression calculation, every force package decision, all of it needs to be updated in light of an empirical data point that was not in the models before that intercept. And updating a threat assessment of that scope for a platform as strategically central as the B-2 across all the commands and planning centers and allied structures that depend on it is not something you do before a press conference. NATO went silent because the work of understanding what last night means has to happen before the work of saying what last night means can even begin. In 1960, a Soviet surface-to-air missile shot down a U-2 reconnaissance aircraft over Sverdlovsk. The pilot survived. The aircraft, whose existence the United States had publicly denied, was recovered largely intact. The Eisenhower administration was caught in a cover story that the wreckage disproved and was forced into public acknowledgement. The U-2 incident did not end American aerial reconnaissance. The program adapted. New platforms were developed, new routes were chosen, new countermeasures were deployed. But something changed. A platform whose invulnerability was its strategic identity was demonstrated in live operational conditions to be less invulnerable than the doctrine built around it assumed. What happened over the Black Sea is not a U-2 moment in the sense that no aircraft was lost, no pilot is in custody, no government has been caught in a public lie. But the structural parallel is worth sitting with. A platform built around the promise of invisibility was found. Found, tracked, measured, and mapped. Found not by luck, not by a stray radar return, but by a system specifically designed and operationally refined to find it. The B-2 will fly again. The Su-57 will be waiting. And now the Su-57 will be waiting with data it did not have before. Russia knows what it learned in 31 minutes. Iran knows what Russia learned. China knows what Russia learned. And somewhere in the classified annexes of NATO's current threat assessment, analysts are revising models built on assumptions that the Black Sea Intercept has permanently changed. The silence continues, and the silence says everything.